Hello my friends, we're 5 mythically immortal players with over 40,000 matches of experience, and in this episode of Garden Time we will show you how to master one of the most important skills you need to master as a mid laner: map awareness. If you've watched our latest video about mid lane rotation, you might think, I mastered the mid lane already after that guide. Alright, I like that attitude, but does good rotation alone make you a great player? Well, while rotating around the map and helping your team all the time makes you a better player, you also have to learn how to read the map to make the right decisions at the right time. In a game where there are 5 enemy players who try nothing more than getting your nuts, you need to be able to read the room, aka the map, and know what you have to do depending on the situation. When you walk into a burning room, you're also not just smacking yourself on the couch while watching how shit's on fire as well, right? Well, so many ML players do exactly this, as they can read the map or understand the current game situation. We broke down the whole thing into simple to follow rules that you can apply in any match. So if you follow all rules and all tips we give throughout the whole video, you can master the map awareness without playing thousands of trial and error matches. Now, before I can teach you about map awareness, we need to remember some of the basics first. As a mage, your responsibilities are the following: protect the mid lane towers, be the magic damage output source of the team, act as a secondary carry of the team, rotate to help your side laners as much as possible, and lastly, provide crowd control and burst against your enemies. It may seem a lot, but when you do understand these 5 basic rules, you can easily make your choice of what to do next. If you remember our mid lane rotation video, a mage who rotates a lot in a game can help their team big time, right? But if you do rotate without using bushes, start ganks or making ambushes, are you still effective? Especially if you die a lot in the process of rotating, your team loses 1 damage dealer, which means less firepower during a team fight. And even worse, a stronger enemy as you feed them. You're not a tank who needs to sacrifice their life to protect the damage dealers who run around like headless chickens. Press F in the comments to pay respect to our dear tag mains, by the way. By the way, did you already re-download Mobile Legends with the update so you can get up to 20% more diamonds? No? Well, then do it right after watching this whole video so you can save a ton of money on your favorite skins. It just takes 2 minutes and it's 100% safe, as I already used it many times myself. Check the description or the pinned comment for the detailed tutorial. So, what should you do now? In the early game, after leashing your jungler's first buff, there are 3 keywords for you to remember: clear, rotate, return. What the hell leashing means, you ask? It means you support your jungler clearing their jungle without taking their XP or gold delay. Away. So you hit the blue buff once and move on to your lane. Like this, your jungler can execute their first rotation faster and start their first gank while the enemy's jungler is busy on their own jungle. But back to our own gameplay now. You should clear your minion waves without dying and without being too greedy to your counterpart. It is very important that you know how to get as much gold and XP as you can so that you can build your items. You also need to make sure that you can answer the following questions right at the start of the match. Is the enemy's roamer with the mage? Is any of the junglers getting the letho? Is there maybe a 2-to-1 setup where one roamer babysits the marksman? Can you clear the wave fast enough, or do you need to hug your tower as you're outnumbered or face a stronger counterpart? And to which lane do you need to rotate first and throughout the match? When you know these things, you know how to clear your wave the best way and what your next step will be afterwards. Remember, last hitting minions give you some extra gold, so you should always try to last hit all minions without putting yourself at risk though, as it's not worth dying for that little bit extra gold, obviously. Secondly, rotate. Just because you need gold and XP, it doesn't mean that you should hug the mid lane and never rotate. But how do we even rotate? As a mage who is squishy, it is unsafe to pass through the enemy's territory during the early game. Make sure to pass to your team's territory to reach your side lane. By doing this, you make sure to stay alive and that you can actually reach your destination without being ganked. If you haven't already, you should really check out our rotation guide for the full details. While you're on the side lane, you should of course try to make a successful gank. That doesn't necessarily mean killing an enemy, as it's often enough to make the enemy retreat to their base as they miss one minion wave. Even if you just prevent your side laner from dying by your sheer presence, it's already enough. Thirdly, return. It is your responsibility to make sure the resources from your waves are not being wasted. But it's even more important that the mid lane turret is not taken down. Remember, the mid lane turrets are the most important turrets of the game. When you go back, make sure to clear your wave and protect it from the enemies who try to get gold from it or even wants to destroy it. After this, rinse and repeat. Clear, rotate, and return. This is what a great mage player needs to do all the time to be as useful as possible. But maybe you ask now, what does all of this has to do with map awareness exactly? These keywords lay the groundwork for what we call map awareness. You clear your wave as it's your first responsibility. While you clear it though, you have to make sure that you're not being ganked by looking at the map. If the enemy's jungler, mage, and roamer are missing, you have to assume they are on their way to get your nuts. So you try to stay as near to your turret so you can escape them when they actually attack you. If they're all on the top though, you clear your wave as quickly as possible and execute the second keyword. You rotate to that lane to support your side laner, or you help getting the turtle. When rotating and you see nobody on the map, you have to assume they camp on your way to the side lane, so you have to take the safest route. And if your jungler and roamer decide to roam to either side lane, you follow them to create the highest number advantage possible. Once you've made your gank on the side lane, you execute the third keyword, return. As you rotate, you still check the map if the enemies are visible, and if you're not sure where they are, you assume they sit in a bush between the side lane and the mid lane. So you can take the safest route again, which you learn in our rotation video. Then you execute the keywords once again, which is clearing the way first, and the whole rotation game starts again. Master these simple things and you've mastered the map awareness in the early game. This you can write into your notes. First, if the enemies are missing, assume they're all around you and play safe. Secondly, rotate to the side lane that needs your help the most, because either A, the enemies gank that lane, or B, your team ganks this lane. Third, always work together with your jungler and roamer, especially in the turtle dance. Now, depending on your team setup, your decisions have to be a little bit different sometimes. We already talked about the 1-3-1 setup, but what even is a 1-3-1 setup? If we look at the map that has 3 lanes... What? Mobile Legends has 3 lanes? Oh well, thank you, Captain Obvious, Nico. 1 stands for 1 ally that is alone on the XP lane. 3 stands for the 3 allies that are mid and roam around, so the jungler, the roamer, and you. And the 1 stands for the lonely ally on the gold lane. When the roamer does not babysit the gold laner, there's more pressure placed on the mid lane. And usually this is the setup that works the best in the game, as you can work together with your roamer and jungler to create the number advantage wherever you go. The only disadvantage you face as a mage is when the enemy does a 1-3-1 setup as well. You will have a harder time farming peacefully, as you will always have multiple enemies around you. If the enemy goes for a 2-1 setup though, you have the biggest advantage, as you will always have the numbers advantage. Just remember that your allied gold laner is outnumbered the whole time, so help that poor fella as much as you can. Now, what happens if there is a 2-1 setup? 2 stands for 2 allies who are on the gold lane, so the marksman and the babysitting roamer. The other 2 are the jungler and you, and the 1 is the forever alone XP laner. In this scenario, things are very different, as you can only really work together with your jungler. Here, the gold lane is a lane that will most likely be ganked the most time, so you should rotate as often as you can there to create the numbers advantage. While going for the turtle, you are the hero that has to secure the area, as your roamer is not present for it. When both teams are doing this setup, you have a pretty relaxed time farming, but if the enemy chooses a 1-3-1 setup, you will face a very big problem, as the enemy's roamer will non-stop jump around you and try to delay your farm. This forces you to hack your turret, which delays your rotation massively, which is why a 2-1 setup is generally not recommended. Now what happens if you suddenly have 2 MMs without any roamer, an ally who abandons their lane, or 3 mages in your team? This happens a lot, especially in lower ranks, so what can you do about it? First, if your XP laner all of a sudden appears on the gold lane and left their lane alone, make sure to clear the incoming minion wave and prevent the enemy XP laner from pushing your turret. Then return back to the mid lane to defend your turret and go back to your regular program. The same you should do if one of your side laners is eating mud. Sometimes you just need to rotate to a lane to defend the turret and to clear the wave to not lose those precious resources. Now, if you have multiple mages in your team because your allies refuse to adjust, the solution is pretty simple. You just have to go to the lane that is left open and do your best there. Never go with your dumb ally to the same lane, as you will massively delay your own farm and be useless AF for most of the match. Luckily, most mages can perform okay-ish on both the XP lane and especially on the gold lane, as you can poke and burst away most marksmen with your skills. This has nothing to do with map awareness, of course, but with common sense and cleverness. If you're the smart and sensible player in your solo queue team, your chances of winning are always much higher. If you want a much deeper guide what to do when having those dumb teammates, or when you have any other guide requests, make sure to click on the join button and become an MLG family member today. Now, during the mid game, the most team fights happen. This is the time where all turret shields are gone, so the first outer turrets will fall soon. Both teams will also fight for the last turtle and the first lord if there's a chance. This is also the time where almost all heroes already have their first 2 to 3 core items, which makes them much more effective in the battle. Many mages have their ultimate power strike right after getting their first 2 core items. So what can you do as a mage with your excellent map awareness to shine the most during your peak time? First, check where most of your allies are located. You want to stick together with them to take down the outer turrets or take the neutral objectives. Don't run to the bot lane, for example, if your jungler and roamer decides to gank top. In the worst case, they get outnumbered in the 3v4 because your counterpart mage was smart enough to rotate correctly. Then all 3 of your allies are being taken down and you lose the outer turret on the side lane, and in the worst case they even take the first lord. All of that just because you rotated to the wrong lane. Now, assuming you rotated correctly and took down a few enemies, so you want to take a neutral objective like the lord now, then you need to ask yourself the following questions. Is my jungler smart, or is he stupidly taking the buff first before the objectives? How many allies are even available to take this objective down? I mean, you and the roamer will probably not be able to take down the lord alone. Is the roamer even there to secure the area? And are your allies even smart enough to go for the lord in the first place? If not, spam the attack the lord command by dragging the attack button on your minimap and the lord symbol. Knowing these things make your map awareness and decision making much better. You will realize that being aware of where things are and where your allies and enemies are make you understand the macro of the game much better. You will be able to use the minimap to your advantage and suddenly perform much better than before. You should still remember the 3 keywords from the early game though and apply the same rules as before. You are a mage of Aramis. You're not a tank who can sustain an ambush, and you can't just run through the enemy's territory without any reassurance that you will not run into 3 enemies. We don't like headless chickens here. It doesn't mean that you're not allowed to ambush the enemy's jungler at their blue buff, for example, especially if you already took down the outer turret mid. You just need to be sure that when you hide here, you will not suddenly be surrounded by enemies. And your plan to ambush the jungler change into a plan to somehow get the hell out of there alive. I want that you write down now into the comments how you will make sure that you can actually ambush the enemy's jungler without falling into a trap yourself by using the minimap. If you've listened closely, you should be able to answer these questions correctly. If you can't answer this question, you should watch this video tomorrow once more and answer it then. Plus taking some notes, which is always very helpful. Now moving on to the late game, there's only 2 possibilities. You're on the winning end or you're on the losing end. There's never a real 50-50 in the game, as there's always one team who has more gold even when it's just a bit, and there's always a team who have more control over the map, either because they took down more turrets or have a team comp who works better in the late game. With a near complete build, what can you do as a mage now? You as a mage has basically one job to do at this point: taking down the enemy's team marksman or jungler. These two roles are the most important right now, as the enemy jungler can secure the lord, while the enemy marksman dishes out the most damage towards your team and the lord. Both are needed to take down the lord, so if you manage to take down one of them, you will have a huge advantage in the lord dance. In the current meta, you're most likely facing an assassin jungler who is squishy, and marksmen are in general squishy against magic damage, as they rarely build Athena shields. And even if they do, you hopefully already built Divine Glaive at this point. How can you do this, you ask? Well, it depends on the game situation. If your team is on the winning side, you can control the entire map. First, as a team, rotate around these areas. This prevents the enemy's jungler from taking his buffs and forces all of your enemies to kill minions and share all resources. This can get everyone in the enemy's team crazy on who will get the gold and why, because everyone will get them for themselves. Your enemies might also become impatient and just force an unnecessary gank, which then enables you to take down the lord even easier, as you will most likely win the gank, I hope. When the enemy is stuck inside of the base, you can even take down the lord while all 5 enemies are alive. Push the minion waves towards the base and then go to take down the lord. You as a mage play the role of area securer unless you play a hero like Lunox or Chang'e. So keep the enemies away from the lord if they try to contest it and provide vision for your team. Secondly, you should take note of your side lanes all the time. A sneaky marksman like Moskov or a split push expert like 𝐼𝐳𝐢𝐧 can leave the base unnoticed and then all of a sudden try to backdoor your team. Make sure that all 5 enemies are trapped inside of the base, and if one escapes, make sure to send them back to the base with a death counter. Thirdly, when you run with the lord towards the enemy's base, your pushing abilities aren't as strong, of course. So now it's a time to focus the enemy's marksman. Even if you die while taking down that fucker with you, it's 100% worth it, as you can't really help that much destroying the base unless you play a push expert like Chang'e, Zazk or Harley. Taking down the marksman with you into the grave is an excellent trade if you have the lord on your side, and most likely will enable you to win the game. Of course, you still need to remember that you're a mage and just can't around too carelessly. Even with a huge lead, an ambush can easily mean your death, which can result in a comeback for the enemy just because you were careless one time. And do you really want to throw away 20 minutes of great plays by being too cocky once? Now what do you do if you're losing a match? What can you do as a mage? First, do not leave the base unless the tanks provides vision, or you leave it as a team. With limited vision and limited map control, you cannot risk throwing the game completely by making stupid plays. When you're on the losing end, you have to play as smart as you can, reserve your skills until it can be used, and work together as a team. Secondly, do not waste the 2 magic centuries in the game. These are used to reveal the enemy's location on either side of the map, which can be helpful if you want to prevent an enemy ambush. One big mistake is whenever it is available, you're tempted to use it. Only use it when the lord is walking towards your base, or when the enemies have been quiet for so long that your team is trapped inside of your base without any chance to get out. And again, like mentioned before, try to take out the enemy's marksman or jungler even if it means your own death. This is a trade that can really pay off, as your team can win the upcoming lord dance because your enemy is missing one of the 2 most important players for this event. Okay, if your team are headless chickens that rather fight for the blue buff than for the lord, then don't die. Wait for the perfect time to make a play and hide in the right bushes to execute the perfect ambush. But the question is, of course, which are the right bushes? And which bushes are dangerous AF? Well, this we have covered in this mage guide, which you should check out right now. Also, a huge shout out to our MLG family members, especially the mythical glory members like Van and Enlightened Beast. See you over there!